Hello, let's go ahead and get started. I want to start by talking about where most entrepreneurs spend their focus. Most business owners focus on profit and not value. When you create profit for your company, you're able to pay yourself more. You have more cash flow to invest and grow. And you can hire more people. But from my seat, everyone I've worked with, most business owners are looking for some sort of freedom. Most aren't looking to create 20 to 50 people companies. They got into being an entrepreneur for a reason. So if you shift your thinking around creating value, you'll be able to monetize the most out of your business at some point when you're ready. And by focusing on creating value, you stop chasing revenue, you stop being at the center of it all. Your business can run without you. Revenue and profit are more predictable, and economic downturns have less of an impact. Buyers will start to seek you out. So we're going to cover the 8 drivers of value that are proven out over 70,000 companies that will help you get an increase of your valuation for your business and overall create a healthy asset that is more than just owning a job. All right, so who am I? I'm Jeff Skadra, founder of Focus First Advisors. We are marketing, advertising, and we help marketing, advertising, and PR agencies to increase the value of their business so they can sell for more in less time than they thought possible. Quick background about me: I've been consulting with businesses and creating scalable companies for the last 5 years. And prior to that, over the last 18 years, I've held prominent roles in government contracting with NASA, EPA, FEMA, Department of Defense, and others. I focused most of my career, though, in marketing and owned a marketing agency for 7 years, which I grew and sold. And after helping many businesses grow to the point of where they wanted to start looking at an exit, we added M&A advisory services through seasoned and certified professionals and built a network of buyers that are actively looking to acquire the companies that we've put together and we helped scale. And we've combined our expertise with a system called the Value Builder, which centers around the 8 drivers of value that I'm going to share with you today. So let's start off by talking about value. At the risk of oversimplifying a complex science, valuation comes down to one calculation. What multiple of profits is your buyer willing to pay? Let me show you how this works. Let's take a hypothetical example of a company with $800,000 in pre-tax profit. The standard multiple in this example is 3.5x. So the value of the company equals $2.8 million. It's a healthy business. It's got healthy value. It's doing pretty well. Now, most business owners will continue down that pathway of focusing on revenue, and they will still see a pretty healthy increase. So in this example, if we increase the profits of your business by $100,000, which is an area that we focus on, this will in turn increase the value of your business to $3.15 million, an increase of about $350,000. But at Focus First, we focus on increasing the value in addition to profit, and thereby increasing the multiple in the business. So at $800,000 pre-tax profit, in this example, increasing the multiple from 3.5 to 7.1 would increase the value from 2.8 to $5.68 million. But what if you did both? This is where the seller really wins. Value is important, but so is profit. The value of the company, in this case, when you focus on both, the same multiple, 7.1, is 6.39 million, or almost 6.4 million. So how do we do this? It's the 8 drivers that we're going to talk about. Turning a business that is unsellable or barely sellable to an asset that other people want. When you focus on strictly profit, that's great. But what about the future? When you focus on value, you open your options up. And when you focus on both, now you really open up the possibilities. And this is why we say value is the owner's metric. How you get there is all about the business, or how you get there is all about how the business is structured, using the 8 drivers of value, helping you get that increase in profit and multiple. So I'm going to start off by sharing some really big examples of companies that have used this system that we partner with at Value Builder, as well as companies we've worked with. The first quick story is about an owner that used what we're going to talk about to her advantage. Stephanie started Breedlove and Associates after she realized how complicated it was to add a nanny to payroll. So she started a company that creates payroll for parents that hired long-term nannies because there were a lot of complicated hoops to jump through for the IRS and effort to pay just one person. But she had a company that no one really cared about for the first 25 years. She still worked really hard at it and was really successful. When Stephanie hit 30,000 per month in revenue, she was able to quit her job at Accenture and devoted herself full-time to Breedlove and Associates. To grow, she had a choice though. She could sell more to existing customers. For example, busy couples often need lawn care, house cleaning, right? Lots of things that busy couples and parents need. Or stick with her niche, nannies. Now, most experts say it's much easier to sell more to existing customers, and they're right. But what is easy rarely makes your business more valuable. Breedlove decided to stick to her niche and find more parents who needed to pay their nanny, and so doing so laid the foundation for a more valuable business. Stephanie knew she had a point of differentiation. She kept working to grow the company. And after 25 years, she built it to $9 million in revenue and over 10,000 customers. And at that mark, at 25 years, Stephanie's kids had left the house and she wanted to do something else, and she decided to sell her business. Stephanie discovered a company called care.com, which gives you a list of 5-star rated nannies and babysitters in your local geography after you've inputted your postal zip code. At the time, care.com had 7 million parents who were subscribers, and she went to care.com and said that all 7 million subscribers need to pay their babysitter, their nanny, and we can make it easy. She said, look, if 1% of your customers buy my payroll service, that's 70,000 customers. That's a business 7 times the size they are today. And it's taken us 25 years to get to 9 million, but you could get to 70 million virtually overnight. Ultimately, Stephanie Breedlove sold her $9 million company for $54 million. She benefited from focusing on the value of her company and not just the revenue. So this is what the owner's metric is all about and where we want to focus our time. So what are the drivers of company value? Well, the first one is financial performance. Whether you're looking to sell or you're just to pay your bills, if a company's not performing well financially, it's hard. So financial performance is the #1 driver in company value. It's also the #1 driver in your happiness. If your business isn't doing well, your happiness is going to suffer. So we need to focus on financial performance and make sure doing well, not just make sure you're doing well, not just profitably, but optimally. Now, the next big thing is monopoly control. Financial performance, critically important. You have to have a business, right? You don't have a business without financial performance. But the next big thing is monopoly control. Monopoly control is a phrase that came from Warren Buffett. He referred to this idea that he invests in companies with a deep and wide competitive moat that makes it difficult to compete with. Giving them more pricing authority, they can charge more. It gives them more margin, and with more margin, they can invest more in sales and marketing over time. And back to the example in Stephanie's case, she was focused on her financial performance at first, but then she focused on one thing and why she was worth $54 million to care.com, because she was the #1 provider of this. She had control of the market because that's all she did and that's what she was known for. And that's the importance of monopoly control. And that's what takes you from just being another provider or just being another company to having a monopoly on one thing, erasing the competition in the prospect's mind. And if you talk to most coaches, you're going to hear this, right? We hear this a lot: niche down. You want to focus on one thing. And most people are actually resistant when coaches do this or when they tell them this, because they think that they're going to lose revenue. But unless you do one thing and do it well, you can't have monopoly control. It's going to hold your company back. So cutting all these extras sounds counterintuitive, but it's really not. The next is Switzerland structure. Go back one. The next is Switzerland structure. It gets its name from, you guessed it, country of Switzerland. The Swiss really value their independence and they don't rely on the surrounding countries around them to get ahead. So how dependent you are on one thing. If you lose that thing and your company suffers if you're dependent on it, especially if it's overly reliant on you. And if it is overly reliant on you, that means you actually own a job more than a business. It's a tough thing to hear. And companies that have an independent structure An independent structure, in other words, they're not dependent on a single customer. They've got good diversity among customer base, and they're not overly reliant on any single employee or single supplier. Sorry, redundant there. So they don't have as much risk. And these are three elements that make up Switzerland's structure. So it's important to be diversified in these areas. Next one, valuation teeter-totter. And what that means is your business is a cash suck or a cash spigot. This means your business is either struggling on a daily basis for cash flow, or there's a steady stream, of cash flow, the quite opposite. If it is a cash suck, then it's constantly needs more money invested into it, which isn't appealing to buyers, and certainly not a good situation for the owner to be in. And if a buyer turns out that he needs to invest more capital in the business operation, that's less money that they have to pay to buy your business, and therefore discounting your valuation. Now, we worked with a company that was doing tremendous on top line growth. And I want to be purposely ambiguous here just to protect the identity, but they were adding clients all over the country. They offered simple marketing tools for small businesses that had a really, really good impact. And so every city they went into, they would add more and more and more clients. But they came to us because they weren't making any money. The owner was thankfully able to pay himself, but they were either at zero or negative cash flow every single quarter. And he had to keep hiring to keep up with the growth and adjusting his pay to reinvest in these areas. A company that focuses on being cash flow positive from day one scores a very high on this valuation teeter-totter. So when you get a customer to prepay, when you get this subscription model or monthly recurring model, it costs less to onboard them than first payment, and everything else after that is profit. So your valuation teeter-totter is going to be very high. The next one is your valuation teeter-totter is going to be very high at that point because of that. So this really leads into the next one, which is recurring revenue. But in that, which I'll get to in a second, but in this case of this example I gave you, the solution was pricing. Most businesses underprice their services because they're afraid no one will buy their services. They don't know how to sell the value, so they end up selling a commodity and competing on price. But as I mentioned, the next one is recurring revenue. And this is a way that you can fix this valuation teeter-totter. Most of agencies that we work with don't have too much problem with recurring revenue, but a lot of them have problem with term length of this recurring revenue, of monthly recurring revenue. And this comes back to, or this comes down to value-based selling. They either aren't good at selling the long-term value or aren't good at reselling after an introductory period, or simply focused in enough on creating really big results in one area. They spread their services out too much. When entrepreneurs think of recurring revenue, they think of SaaS, software as a service companies, media companies, and maybe membership websites. But even if you are offering project-based services, there's always room to create what we call sticky services, a way to make them rely on you. They can't go anywhere unless they get the results that you can provide, and therefore you give them a good reason to keep paying you. So here's an example from our Value Builder system. H. Bloom started as a retail business of selling flowers when they decided to reimagine the business of selling flowers into a subscription company. Now, people usually buy flowers for special occasions, but they realize places like high-end hotels buy flowers regularly to make their patrons feel like they're fancy. They have a special hotel or even restaurants, that elevates everything. And so why wouldn't people want their home to have that same high-end experience? And so they decided to sell a subscription model so people can have these fresh flowers in their home, just like they have when they walk into a fancy hotel or a nice restaurant. And so what did this do for their company? When you look at the average lifetime value of a flower store customer, a typical transaction on average for a transient customer, someone who comes in just time to time, walks in and buys a bouquet of flowers, is about $29. The average lifetime value of an H. Bloom subscriber is more than $4,500. They focused on creating subscribers, not just, they focused on, there we go. They focused on creating subscribers, not just how many times can we get that customer back, but turning them into a subscriber that almost guarantees $4,500 a year. In comparison, a typical flower store will throw out more than 60% of their inventory, whereas H Bloom only throws out 2%. They only purchase enough flowers to fill their subscription needs. And which company would you rather own? Which one would you find less stressful? Now, you may not have inventory of products that rot or die, I guess in this case, but the way this example relates to agencies is simple. You may already have monthly recurring contracts, but those contracts are likely custom every time. We see that a lot, and therefore unpredictable. They have scope creep and other profit sucks. But when you focus down on productizing a set of services, everything becomes predictable. Recurring revenue subscription helps to plan your resources effectively and makes your business more predictable to run, and therefore more efficient, more profitable, and less stressful. So next is growth potential. This is demonstrating that your service, your market, or business is scalable. Now, you don't have to scale it, but it has to be shown that it can scale. And why do people care about growth potential? Why do buyers care about growth potential? Should be obvious, but think of an acquire for a second. For most entrepreneurs, we think of the end, the exit, as sort of the last mile of the marathon. If you can get your body across that finish line, right? But if you put yourself in the shoes of an acquirer, it's actually their starting line. They're going to buy your business for $1 million, 10 million, 100 million. It doesn't matter, but that's their starting line. And what they want to know is that your company has legs. It can grow quickly beyond what you've achieved. They want to understand your growth potential. And one of the questions we ask on the Value Builder Score questionnaire to evaluate it is used to ascertain the quantity or to quantify your growth potential. Let me share another example. Rod founded Aftermail in 2004 to provide a better way for companies to store old emails. He had only been in business for 2 years and only sold 2 contracts to 2 Fortune 500 companies, generating about $2 million in revenue. Instead of focusing on finding more customers, he focused on creating value in his business and then finding a buyer. And after just 2 years in his business, and despite only just creating about $2 million in annual revenue, Aftermail was acquired for $35 million. That's 17.5 multiple on top line. And the reason why, when he found a buyer, Rod made a case about the growth potential of his company. He talked to the company that he was competing with and showed them what he had created and was able to demonstrate the potential his company had to grow that company that he was talking to with this investment of 35 million to much greater numbers. Rod's company was more valuable in this company's hands than it was in Rod's, which led him to this outlandish offer. Now, moving right into the next driver, customer score is this next driver. And when you ask people, what is your number one differentiator in your business? And they're likely to say customer service. My customers love me, and that's why we get more business. But there's really a lot more to that than just what you think your customers. And so this guy, Fred, developed something called Net Promoter Score, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. Fred was a Bain consultant who had spent his career studying what leads customers to refer and repurchase. He wondered why companies with satisfied customers were not growing faster. Fred discovered that there is no predictive value between a customer saying they are satisfied and the likelihood they will either repurchase or refer you. And so he developed a standard measure to benchmark companies on the willingness to recommend that's used by most Fortune 500 companies today, including Apple, Intuit, eBay, and Amazon. But Fred got to work with this, combing through the numbers that he got, and discovered one question which was predictive of both repurchase and referral. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or colleague? We hear that all the time. We see it all the time on surveys. Fred saw that this question was highly predictive that the customer would actually take on one of 2 behaviors. Promoters who gave a score of 9 to 10 on that were much likely to refer a business or likely to repurchase from that customer. Direct correlation there. And research from the 2011-2021 found that extraordinary performers on Net Promoter Score saw their stock outperform the US stock market 3 times And so this net promoter score becomes one of our 8 drivers of value because of this. Now, how do you calculate your net promoter score if you've never heard of it? Well, to measure your net promoter score, survey a group of your customers, asking them the simple question I just said: on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or colleague? Group your respondents into one of 3 categories: promoters, score of 9 to 10, passives, score to 7 to 8, tractors, 0 to 6. People who will recommend that others not buy from you, right? And passives are just going to, they may not leave you, they're just going to stay pretty status quo. And promoters are actually going to be your raving fans. Those people who give you a 9 or 10, yeah, I said this already, a little bit in the weeds here, but to figure out your net promoter score, take your percentage of promoters. In this example, 25%, subtract your percentage of detractors, which is 5%, and you would be left with a net promoter score of 20%. The average net promoter score is about 15%, so that's your benchmark. That's what you either want to, that's what ideally you want to beat that, right? You want to get very high, 20, 30, 40, 50%. It's highly predictive that your customers are going to repurchase from you if you get this and refer you. And that's why it's important leading indicator of the value of your company. And just because you aren't getting complaints doesn't indicate that your customers are happy. If they aren't buying from you or not asking for more, then they likely don't like you as much as they think you do. It's why a lot of acquirers and a lot of entrepreneurs have really adopted this methodology as a way to evaluate their business or businesses that they're looking to buy. You'll be able to give them longitudinal data over many years, tracking and improving your net promoter score if you are measuring now. All right, this is the big one. The final driver is hub and spoke. Okay, hub and spoke business is like a bicycle wheel, just like the picture shows. The integrity of your business is all reliant on you. If you remove the hub, the wheel won't hold its shape. Just like if you remove yourself from business, things will fall apart or at least suffer. This relates closely to the Switzerland structure, which is your business being reliant on one person. If you are required to make most of the decisions in the day-to-day of your business for it to operate correctly, well, then again, you own a job, not a business. Let me jump into a quick story about myself here. And this is one of the big motivators that led me to consulting in the first place and doing this. I owned a marketing agency for 7 years. Half of that time was spent in the grind, working 60 to 80-hour weeks, like a lot of you, pretty much every single weekend. We kept adding services because I had the know-how. When clients asked, we delivered, but most of that was on my shoulders. And this led to a very particular night one Saturday. It was 10 p.m., it's dark out, and we had these big windows reminding me how late it was, just staring out into the abyss. And I was just really deflated that night because I had deadlines I needed to get through. I need to make money, but at the sacrifice of missing my daughter's soccer game. And she had scored 2 goals that week. And so my wife had called me and let me know. I was really excited about it, but really deflated overall. So from that point on, I promised myself that I would never sacrifice the now for hoping for a better future. And this is a recurring this is a recurring thing that I see with a lot of the clients we work with and a lot of business owners that I talk to. You know, they are so focused on building something down the road in the future that they forget about the now. So it's a big area that we focus on first and foremost when working with our clients. So when the business is relying on the owner, we call this the owner's trap. Your business becomes dependent on you because you started the business and you were expert in something. You start selling that expertise, and this can lead to you being the key customer contact. And so the customer wants to deal with you directly. And because you are so well versed in the area of expertise, it can be tempting to offer more products and services because they ask, right? And then you may not have the right employees that can deliver these add-ons, just like where I was, and you end up delivering them yourself. And not only that, the customer ends up becoming very, very reliant on you. They want to see you all the time. You know, they want to interface with you. And sometimes some signs that you've fallen into the trap are Simply, business slows down when you take a vacation, right? It suffers. You are taking a laptop with you, right? Workcation. Customers come to you with their problems, so do employees. And your growth has reached a plateau and you can't figure out how to move past it. And not only are businesses stuck in the owner's trap stressful to run, they're also worth significantly less than they could be because few people are going to buy a company that is dependent on its owner. Either that or you're going to end up in a very long earnout. And I can tell you from experience, there are a lot of risks with having long earnouts as well. And so many business owners say yes when clients, customers ask, like I already said. Can you do an additional service or product or customization? And inevitably, the client's going to say yes because they see the money dangling out in front of them. But this broadens the list of products and services they sell, which seems good and sounds good at first. But selling lots of things to a few customers is a recipe for your business to become owner dependent, because you are likely the only person in the company with enough knowledge to successfully deliver such a broad product or service line. And then you get stuck in other things like going back to the valuation teeter-totter, having enough cash. Do I have enough cash to pay the person now to come in and do these new things? It just creates a lot of complexity. The most valuable companies do the opposite, selling one or two things to lots of customers. The secret to scaling is to move from selling many things to a few customers. The secret to selling is to move from selling many things to a few customers towards selling less stuff to more people. Now, how do you decide where to focus? Well, that's what we help with. Focus first. We help with really helping you understand what is the sweet spot of your business that can move you forward faster and become more scalable and eventually be more valuable to sell. So let's conclude here. I want to make sure everyone gets some value. I want to summarize a little bit in a different way and leave you with 8 key things that you should do and know as it relates to what we just discussed. And the number one thing is industry and revenue are important, but not the only thing, right? Revenue is not the only thing. There's plenty of other things that are going to increase the value of your business. If you sell one service to a lot of people, it can be a lot more profitable. Reduce reliance on a single customer. There's tons of risk here. If that customer goes away, and it's super convenient, right? It's super convenient to have one customer paying you lots of money. And it's amazing, right? When it first happens. But when that client goes away, if they have economic downturn, if they get bought out, right? There's lots of things that can happen there. That goes away, it can destroy your business. So can having the reliance on one single employee. So reduce reliance on one single employee, whether that's you or somebody else. And building processes around a productized offer will make this a lot easier. Reduce reliance on a single supplier. For agencies, service-based businesses, this could be a white label, this could be a partner, this could be software that you're relying on. There's a lot of risk in a lot of these things going away if you put all of your eggs into one basket and that's all you're selling is something based on some software or something else out there. I know HubSpot's been around for a really, really long time and they seem very stable. But again, if everything you're doing is relying on HubSpot and they go away for whatever reason, AI turns a corner here and makes them irrelevant, now all of a sudden your business is irrelevant too. Getting a 50% plus net promoter score, achieving that, getting 9s and 10s on every customer is super important. And you can add into that, questions that help you understand what you could be doing better. Leave some field to plow. Make sure there's room for your business to grow. Don't enter into markets that are too small. Don't niche down too small that you're, really gonna, run out of runway. And lastly, create that recurring revenue stream. And if you already have a recurring revenue stream, either increase the term length, how long do you have clients for, or look at other things that can be added onto that can be sticky, that make them not want to go away. So if you follow these 8 things as it relates to the 8 drivers, your profitability will go up, your company value will go up, and your stress will go down. So what's next? Well, number 1, if you want this replay, register at focusfirst.co/webinar-web registration. You'll get that and other reminders to new webinars that we have up and coming. You can also email me at the bottom, jeff@focusfirstconsulting.com. If you're looking for a score evaluation estimate, we can go over that with you. But the thing that I like to provide people with first gives a really, really good, valuable information for yourself is, are you ready for an exit? So we have this free pre-score questionnaire that you can fill out that'll give you all the information about yourself and your business to really understand if it is something that you're ready to move forward to and move into the next step and have a conversation with us. All right. Any questions so far? Excellent. Well, thank you for joining. We're happy to have had you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.